long
2 weeks.
weeks.
My apologies. Let me start again. Matlodi Maseko, permanent member in the Standing Committee of Public Accounts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Bulelo Isaac Sileko, also a permanent member of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Honorable Sileko.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. Member Ashley Kasim. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kasim. And now, honorable members, without wasting time, I'm going to hand over to the AG first and thereafter to the audit committee. Take us through the report, just talk through it without reading it word for word. Some of the sections we are only too familiar with them, especially the first 3-4 pages. And then if there are any salient point that you think needs our attention, please bring that to our attention. Over to you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start the meeting, resume our second part of the meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Account for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department of Education, as well as the audit outcomes of the department. This is the second part which was preceded by a meeting of this committee together with the briefing by the Auditor General on the audit outcome of the department. That was a closed meeting. This one is an open meeting. In other words, it is open to the members of the public who wants to ask questions because it was advertised as such in various newspapers in all the 3 official languages of the province. We are going to start with the report and then the manner in which we are going to deal with it. If there's some remarks that the minister would like to make, we'll allow him as well as the HOD. And thereafter, we will allow members of the committee and members of the legislature who are present to ask questions. We are dealing with 3 sections of the report, which is section C, section E, and section F. Now, are there any opening remarks, Honorable Minister, would like to make?
Thank you, Chairperson. You'll know that we've been here for 5 hours already, so I'm going to make sure that my remarks are brief. Just safe to say that as honourable members would know, our department got an unqualified audit this year. We had an excellent meeting with the Auditor General on the 27th of September 2023. And what struck me about that meeting was that the comment by the Auditor General that, of course, there is still room for improvement, but that we are moving in the right direction. And so we certainly look forward to sharing with you today and look forward to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. HOD.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think maybe just to ally myself with the Minister's comments, maybe just one additional reflection on my part, Chairperson, and that is that our budget was 28.165 billion, which is a very big number, and we spent 28.129 billion. We spent 99.9% of the adjusted budget, which I think is very important. I think the other thing that I just want to say is we got an unqualified finding for the department, okay, with a finding, sorry, for the department, but on the financial side, we have no findings. And so I am very happy with that. And I think what we are here today is to present ourselves to you so that you can ask us any questions in relation to anything that, you know, may have to be discussed in this committee. But I am hopeful because what I see in our department is a forward trajectory for all the things that we are doing and slight improvements in things. So thank you very much, Chairperson. We are here to present ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HOD. Honorable members, if I can get an indication of members who want to ask questions and comments, points of clarity on the sections I've mentioned, what we are going to do, we'll allow members to ask questions on all sections across there. We are not going to first deal with C, then E, then F. So if I ask an honorable member to ask question, he or she can ask right across so that we can get answers on all those sections. Honorable Maseko, Honorable Seleku, Honorable Kasim, and Honorable Bartman in that order.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to the Department and Minister. Now, I need to congratulate you, Minister, and you on the unqualified report. The only, like the last financial year, the only concern is the performance auditing that it has been always the issue in the department. And then we engaged with the Auditor General to say where if they can help to diagnose what is it that needs to be done by the department. Is it a moving target from the AG to the department, or it is not? No. They are, and I'll make an example. I was talking to one of my colleagues about the issue of the underperformance on on the performance auditing of the Premier's department, and responsibility being the legislation says SETA have to help in procuring what they needed for training. So they underperformed not because they couldn't, it's because of the SETA. And also the department, yes, they, like AG made a very nice example of the warm bodies or the actual performance is that it happened, but reporting, that's where the problem is from the department. Now, we are trying to find out that the problem, is it the how you do the target setting or the KPIs, or what is the problem that is making it difficult for the department when coming to reporting? Because we can say that you are performing, but if we are going to get the same outcome when coming to reporting the good work that you are doing, is sort of downgrade that effort that you are doing in making sure that service delivery out there is there. Now, where if, I'm going to ask you, Minister, and put you on the spot. If you have to diagnose what extra thing can be done or innovation that you can come up with looking at the outcome when coming to AG's performance, what will be that is different that you can do to make sure that the reporting, and I'm not shortchanging the numbers that are out there that you have to interact with for you to get those reporting mechanisms, but with the IT world that we are in, one way or another, we have to say, how do we go about to make sure that as partners, you achieve also on that reporting that AG is raising concern about? Chair, I'm not going to ask questions for the sake of asking questions. That is the only concern that we receive from AG, and that's what I would want the department maybe to engage with us about. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, allow me to also use this opportunity just to greet the Minister, the HOD, and the entire team and say good afternoon. My name is Mbulelo Isaac Sileku, and I'm the member of the committee. Minister or HOD, I will go to 127 in terms of performance agreement, and I would just want to know that whether the fact that you have instituted performance agreement, that it has it has actually impacted in the department making the progress that it has actually made in terms of getting unqualified audits, and also if there are any challenges when it comes to the signing of performance agreements, is there any? Or is everything, is it a welcome initiative and everybody is playing their part? And then in terms of page 129, I know that in terms of your inability to deliver on the expanded ECD mandate, I know that the mandate was actually transferred to WECD in 2022 in April. What has been the challenges in terms of that function coming to you? And would you say that we have sufficiently dealt with it, coming to the next financial year? And then in terms of page 130, I see that you have mentioned two key emerging risks that you're going to deal with in the next financial year. And then would you say that the fact that there was a pronouncement by the Minister of Finance in terms of budget cuts, that risk should also be mentioned there as number 3? Or what is your concern pertaining to that pronouncement by Minister Godongwana in terms of budget cuts? How is it going to affect you? And what plans are you putting in place to actually mitigate that risk, as we'll have to do with less going forward? And then in page 132, there's a lot of cases that has been mentioned. Some has been referred to the SEPs. If possible, I don't need names of individuals. We just want to know whether there is any progress made in that regard in terms of those cases that has been referred to SEPs for investigations. Then Member McLeod, I'm almost done. And in terms of 179, there's a statement that disciplinary steps taken. Just need the department just to elaborate on that statement about progressive discipline. You know, what is the department mean? What is meant by that particular statement? You know, it's at the bottom just in terms of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Just that statement, progressive discipline has been taken. What does it entail? And then the last one is on page 182.
As jy kan my trickie dan. Ons sal sien.
Can I continue?
Maar ek het net daar's daai een wat ek op
Yeah, just share on the bottom line that about the 21 invoices older than 30 days. Just the department to just elaborate more on it. What is currently happening with that, and has this matter been dealt with and is finished and clear? Those are the questions for the day, the Chair. Thank you very much.
Chair, just to confirm, you mentioned that we can now ask questions in the other sections. Only CEF. Okay, so then I misunderstood what you said about going to. No, it's fine. Let me go to section C. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine. My question is directed to section C, or rather part C, on page 132 regarding reported cases on the issue of fraud and corruption. The cases mentioned on the second table there are very serious, especially those involving fraud. I just need some clarity which positions within the department did these perpetrators occupy or previously occupy. That's my only question for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Chair, first, I just want to say congratulations for your unqualified audit. And in terms of the expenditure rate, firstly on page 177, I did a quick calculation just of the irregular expenditure as a percentage of the total budget, which gets me to 0.23%. And while every cent always counts, it is a very, very good percentage for the department to achieve within the economic context of South Africa. But I would just like you to please just take us through that now going forward in terms of the irregular expenditure amounts. What would you do differently so that this would not have been irregular? Because irregular expenditure, for example, is not the same as fruitless and wasteful. So if you can also just take us through that, okay, it's irregular, but did the money end up where it was supposed to go? Okay. Then, in terms of the audit report, I'm not sure if the department has the particulars before them, but I'll just maybe speak to some of the matters. On our slide 4, I don't know if the department has that, but I'll just maybe read it out. So one of the things that the AG has indicated is, okay, the mod program had under expenditure, and earlier today it was indicated to us that there was a national transversal contract in terms of the mod expenditure. So now, and maybe Deirdre is being blunt today, but for me, I'm very much trying to understand, okay, if national has a transversal contract, and their contract that we are on has expired, but it's in our finding in our audit report, because we are not the national department, for example. So if you can maybe just take us through what national said in terms of making sure that the reporting is maybe accurate, or how they put in place processes to ensure that when you're on a transversal contract, that it continues, and that, for example, the AG knows that actually maybe the Western Cape department is going to be affected because our contract has expired and we haven't renewed it, for example. I'm not sure if you're with me still in the same WhatsApp group, but if not, please let me know. Then on the Funza Leshaka bursary, One of the things, and it's both the Funza Lushaka bursary holder finding, as well as the finding on the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative. And again, maybe I'm not in the same WhatsApp group, but for me, I started thinking to myself, okay, if we don't know whether someone has gotten their degree yet, I would ask the Department of Higher Education to send me their degree. Or I would say to Funza Lushaka, please send me the contract that says I'm on a Funza Lushaka bursary, or NSFAS, or whoever it is that you're supposed to ask for the information for. They would send it to you and then you would report it. So if you could just maybe take me through that, what was the gap in communication that the AG is saying there's no reliable information, because it is technically not your Funza Lushaka contract, and it's technically not, you're not the one who's training the person in terms of higher education, but you might be the one employing the person in the department. So if you can just take me through that process of getting the information from the respective stakeholder. Then in terms of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative, it's very similar, where some of the indication is like, okay, I don't know whether the person has gotten a grant, or I don't know whether the person got NSFAS. But again, the Social Development Department is not a provincial department, and NSFAS is also not a provincial department. So if you can just maybe take me through how you get the information from that respective national department, because I do struggle with reconciling a provincial department having a finding based on a national department information that is required. So maybe if I can understand that, I would understand, okay, this is what needs to be fixed in the next year. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Nkontlo.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would go back to the Auditor General's briefing to the teacher. It's something that must be, taken lightly and accepted, because it's within, I'm hoping she's not saying that. If we go to the definition of in the briefing note of the AG, that irregular expenditure is expenditure other than unauthorized expenditure incurred in contravention of, or that is not in accordance with a requirement of any applicable legislation. Because we are ensuring we are all abiding by the rule of law, I think it becomes important that we must always understand irregular expenditure in this particular context, that it is expenditure that would have been done, in contravention of applicable legislation, and we should be able to curb such at all material times. And actually, in that context, Chair, say in that briefing of the AG, I would want both the minister perhaps to explain to us about what the AG refers as the root cause of management did not ensure the timeous completion of the irregular expenditure assessment and determination process after the prior year auditing finding was raised and reported, and legal opinion obtained confirming the non-compliance and related irregular expenditure. So I'm trying to understand, why would this, because this is said to be the root cause. So I want a minister to explain to SCOPA about this, and what has been done with those that would have been responsible not to register timeously, as it is rule as part of the PFMA that irregular expenditure needs to be registered. And I think that is something that we all know. And I think further, the Auditor General makes the point that there's a slow response by management in addressing this particular root causes. What is being done? Because one assumes that this would have been raised by the Auditor General in management reports, which they would engage quarterly with the department. Where exactly is the problem of not being responsive to issues that would have been raised to a point that it is raised as a root cause that management is slow, meaning it is not responsive on matters that are being placed on its table by the Auditor General as risks in as far as its control, internal control environment to ensure that this department does not, in its performance indicators and on issues of irregular expenditure, which are compliance related matters in terms of legislation. And my last one, Chair, which is just around this issue, the audit report, is that on this program 2, that would have achieved 40%. And I'm sure some of the issues have been taken care of by questions of the other members. I'm interested to know that this particular program, in as far as its spending is concerned, I heard the HOD said of its budget, they've all actually spent, I think, almost 97, if not 98% of their budget. So I'm interested on program 2 specifically, that on its budget, what percentage of budget have they spent versus the 40% on performance of their achieved targets that they were supposed to achieve, which are below than 50%, and what would be the position of the department around such a comparison between the budget expenditure versus the achievement of the targets that were set by the department in their annual performance plans. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, just on a point of order, in terms of Rule 66.
What does Rule 66 say?
It's related to points of order. If I remember correctly, there's about 6 subsections. But I'm raising a point of order that, firstly, I'm not the Chair of Finance. Second of all, I quoted the figure, which was 0.23%, not 3%. And my questions, Chairperson, if I could just repeat them in case the department might be confused about what they might be, is I said every cent counts. That was my words. I asked how it could be fixed.
Honorable Nkondo,
Chair,
just
may I conclude my point of order?
sorry. Honorable Nkondo, just allow Honorable Batman to finish.
Thank you, Chair. In order to conclude my point of order, I quoted, and I quote here what I said, while every cent counts, which is how I started. I asked how it was going to be fixed, and I asked whether the service was delivered. So for the record, I just want those matters to be recorded as such. Thank you.
A point of order on member Batman, Chair.
Honorable Nkondo.
Yes, a point of order. Member Batman, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Education, must not abuse this platform, because if she wants to argue against the points that I've made, it's a different ballgame. She can't want to use a point of order to try and clarify and give counter arguments on what I have said, and also utilize the time to try and explain herself. That is not a point of order, Chair. So I'm really asking that she must not abuse the rules of the House so that she makes her point. It is not her committee, this one that we are in, if that is how she normally runs her own committee.
Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members, Honorable Nkondo and Honorable Batman. I'm not going to allow a debate by both of you in the committee. Now, can I, Honorable Batman, when you spoke, even if I did not agree with what you were saying, I allowed you to speak and finish. So if you may please also allow me to do that as well. Now, what I'm not going to allow in the committee is a debate by the two of you as members. The purpose of us here is to ask the department if for one or any other reason your question was misunderstood, I will allow you to correct it, which is what I did as well. Now, other than that, you've clarified yourself what you were saying, and I also take what Honorable Nkonde has said. So I think now everything is clear. I would like us now to move on with the meeting and not spend a lot of time on your issues. Now, just one or two questions from my side, Honorable Minister, as well as the HOD and the rest of the department. The one of the issues that was raised, especially that has been a misstatement by the Auditor General, it says that on page 6 of the briefing that we received on material findings, percentage of Funza Lushaka bursary holders placed in school within 6 months upon completion of studies or upon confirmation that the bursar has completed. They say you've reported a percentage of 58.6 against a target of 60%. But then they said the department did not perform adequate confirmation of the evidence to support the reported performance achievement. And when I asked them directly that, are you saying they did not achieve that 58%? In actual fact, that's what they were meaning. But they also went further. They said that it was a misstatement of the KPI in a way. And they listed that because the KPI itself has got about 30 elements. So one way or the other, that's why it became a material finding from there. Maybe if you can take us through, and I think the same issue was raised in the previous year as well. It was this Funza Lushaka. What is it with this Funza Lushaka that is so complicated that we cannot actually get through it? So if maybe we can just get some more explanation around it. Yes, my second question is on the issue of irregular expenditure, which is 57 million. According to the Auditor General, part of the reason that it's irregular is because there were no SCM process followed. And if I can find out what was the reason that there were no processes, because they say procurement process, but from my notes, I took it as SCM processes. Yeah, those are my 2 questions.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, members, and thank you for the questions. So our team will attempt to answer these questions that you have put out for us. But I'm gonna kick off, and Mr. Ile and his team will answer the more technical aspects of the questions. But maybe I just want to just start with the first comment just about the performance auditing. And that we fell short on the performance auditing. But I look at it as the accounting officer from an overall perspective of improvement, because last year we had 4 findings. Okay, we had 4 findings on performance auditing, and they say we have 1 finding. So for me, that's like we've improved. Now clearly we didn't get over the line. We got very close to the line, but we didn't get over the line, and so we accepted the finding of the auditor. But obviously the context will be provided between Mr. Ile and Mr. Cronje involved with that performance indicator, where we didn't get over the line, Chairperson. They will indicate what the reasons are, essentially, and maybe then just to bring you an understanding. But I think the general point I wanted to make, because you asked, is the question of reporting. Yes, we can always improve that. Point I wanted to make is that we had 4 findings last year, and we got 1 finding now. So for me, that's like feedback to the team, guys, we tried, it's not good enough. We've actually got to try and do something now. We can actually just lock this thing down to get to the point where in the end, this isn't actually, an issue. So we put in our own processes. Mr. De Bego isn't present today. He's sort of driving it. Those processes, I do believe, got us to an improved position, but didn't actually get us over the line. And so Chairperson, I just wanted to say that in terms of Funza Lushaka. I think then also just to answer the question about performance agreements, is it in everyone's plan in terms of these performance indicators? So the answer would be yes. It's in the person's performance agreement to be able to actually execute. Each person, they will execute whatever it is they do need to execute. And in fact, the DDGs, they have it in their performance agreements where overall it has an impact on their score. And obviously on mine, but on theirs as well. So we have tried to sort of get the accountability in relation to that in terms of performance information. So that's just the second thing. I think the third thing, just, to maybe just talk about, the third thing is on ECD, question that was asked on ECD. I mean, we did have 2 years, April 2021, we actually, if I'm correct now, April 2021 to 2022, and we're in the second year now, April 2022, take over the ECD function. I mean, Dr. Naika can talk perhaps about the detail of the takeover, but essentially, we've, like in our view, we've taken over that function smoothly, without a disruption to the service, as opposed to some provinces in South Africa where there was a collapse of the service when education took it over. And the reason that we didn't have a collapse is because we took a decision, Chair, is it right? We took a decision to try and keep the system the same in order to allow our officials to actually understand the system. So that system is not like us. Like in education, we are actually running the system. We have employed the teachers, we have the circuit managers, we have the districts. In ECT, that is being run through something that Dr. Naika calls SSOs, which he will tell us what that is. SSOs, but it's basically NGOs running the set. So it's a very different model, which education had to get used to. And I think we did, we have managed to lock that down, but I will give Dr. Naika perhaps an opportunity, with your permission, Chair, to maybe just explain a little bit of the detail. And then on the mitigation of the risks on page 130, we spoke about 2 emerging risks, but you then obviously, I think, member, so you said the risk of budget cuts. Now, the reason why it's not written there is a timing issue. Timing issue, but when we prepared this report and when there's budget cuts, we were told about the budget cuts. Because I've been telling the ministry 120 days ago, or 90 days ago, I'm not even the figure, which figure is, if you told me we're going to have budget cuts, I didn't see that come. So that's why it's not in there. But obviously it is one of the emerging risks. And then I think you would also indicate on the 2 we had written that clearly we have a growing demand. The census that was just released confirms that we're now the 3rd largest province in South Africa, and that we do have numbers coming into our province of learners that must be accommodated, and we mitigated those risks in the year under review with a big program which was called Rapid Build, which you may have heard of, which is a program where we build schools at a speed that hasn't been seen inside our sector before. We built those schools at that speed to be able to do that, and we provided the educators for the classroom. So educate in a classroom, equal places, X amount of places, and that's why we were successful in actually managing to place all unplaced learners from last year, in the last year process. So I think that's what we'll say there. And then obviously the energy crisis and total blackout scenario is always there. It's hanging over us. It's a problem. But in terms of the energy crisis, the department adapted to the many things. And so I'm going to pause there. And Mr. Eli, I'm going to hand over to you for the other questions. Was there more of a financial, technical nature? Can I hand over to you, please? Thank you.
No, I think, thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, members, for the questions. I think the issue around the performance information, as the member indicated, it is our Achilles, and as the HSC said, we made some progress, but we were not over the line. I think the main issue here is we're sitting with a sector indicator, which is Provincial Saka. As far as I recall, we managed to progress the past 2 years in that, but then there are other factors that plays into that sphere. And this is an indicator that's been driven by DBE, but they are the ones that supplies us with the information that we require. It's not something that's just completely within our control. And from a governance perspective, it makes it very difficult for us to manage. But perhaps at this stage, before I get to the other questions, I'll just ask Mr. Matthijs Cronje just to take you through what we are going to do forward and the collaboration we will do with DBE to try and rectify the situation as well. Because in the past years, ourselves involved, we got written correspondence between us and DBE, and even the agent themselves got involved to try and rectify the situation. This is a performance indicator for all provinces, And so, so what happens in the Western Cape does occur sometimes in other provinces as well. But let me ask Mr. Cronje at this stage just to elaborate on the challenges we have with Funzo Lusaka and the indicator itself, and then also what is the way forward around that as well. Mr. Cronje?
Chairperson, sorry, that microphone doesn't work. Yeah, just the issue around the Funza Lushaka and the unfortunate position, because as indicated, it is a national kind of indicator that we need to kind of play within. The challenge is that we receive the data, but the data is not always clean in terms of the indicator as it's set for the sector. And what we've done in order to actually rectify that, we've established better relationships with our parent body, which is the Department of Basic Education in this aspect. And we actually focused on the indicator itself and what actually needs to be in place in terms of data, the integrity of the data. Further to that, it must also be supported by the actual academic transcripts to verify that the data is correct. And the challenge there is that up to 15–20% of those who opt to be placed in the Western Cape is from other provinces and other universities, which we don't have direct relationships with. And that's the part that we've now brokered with the Department of Basic Education to provide that to us, but then also to clean the data when it's sent, that we don't receive a placement list, but there's actually prior years graduates on that list as well. And all of that we've started to iron out. And we are actually now in a process to finalize that the data for this specific academic year or last academic year actually is correct and should not actually cause problems moving forward.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just in terms of part of the measures that the HOD has implemented to show the progress that we've made so far. So we have what we call a top management meeting. So the HOD has firstly assign names to every performance indicator to allocate responsibilities so that people know what they're responsible for. And that's what the other member indicated about the performance agreement question. The other thing is also we measure the indicators on a quarterly basis at our top management meeting, and managers have to report in terms of whether they're going to achieve the target or not. And so there is monitoring happening there as well. And then in some cases, some of our targets is annual targets, and in some cases you can manage that throughout the year, whether you can either collect the data on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, and those data is verified timelessly as well. So, Chairperson, there has been measures been put in place for us to move away from the qualification around performance information. I must just say at this stage, Chair, that a clean audit is not something that's strange to this department. We had clean audits about 4 or 5 years ago, for 4 years in a row. So it is something that we are striving towards to get back to where we were, put it that way. So yeah, we are working hard at it because the data sets we have to collect is quite extensive. So that is the issue. Chairperson, if I can just go back to the other questions as well that members have asked, and I'm going to go down the list. So there was a question around the SAPS cases, around the forensic cases around SAPS. Chairperson, it's also a kind of partnership we have with SAPS, but SAPS have their own challenges as well. And so the progress there in terms of follow-up, it is slow, and we do have challenges in that regard as well. But where they do follow up and where they do have investigations, we have seen some outcomes in that regard as well. I think members have seen some of that in the newspapers as well. Then as far as clarity is concerned around progressive discipline in respect of irregular expenditure, that means we are taking the case through our what we call our labor relations department. where we either give people verbal warnings or we give them written warnings as well. So that's what we mean by progressive discipline. It takes a particular format that people know that they should not transgress. Then, as far as the invoices are concerned, I will just refer that to my colleagues, Ms. Feldman and Mr. Mpisi, if they can just maybe come in here around the invoices, 21 invoices, and what's happening currently with those invoices. Thank you.
All right, sure. Thanks, Mr. Eli. Chairperson and the members, on the invoices, it's a reconciliation that is happening with SIU, which is ongoing, and hence it's currently regarded as in dispute because we are unable to settle up until the full reconciliation of all invoices has been received. So since post the audit, they've been cooperative. They've reissued us with the invoices. So this matter will be settled post the annual report that is being tabled now. It won't reflect in the next financial period. Thank you.
Person, if I can just carry on around some of the other questions. There was a question around the fraud cases and what are the positions of these staff members. Let me say that first and foremost, that is fraud cases are happening at our school, it's at school level. And so then the positions vary considerably. In some cases, either school principal or it's a teacher or it's a secretary there. But there are various positions that where these transgressions happen, and it happens around obviously monetary issues where some people have an influence.
I was saying that before AG leaves, but she already left. I wanted to ask her something.
Audit committee or the AG?
The AG or the
AG left long time ago.
Okay. I thought the audit committee will be able to chip in, but it's gone. It's fine. We'll ask.
Okay. Sorry, Chairperson, so if I can just go back. So those people that's been found guilty of fraud and corruption, again, that's at our school level, but that is basically various positions in those institutions as well. Then there was a question around the MOT program, but underspending there, and also the issue around transversal contracts. Obviously, if we as department, if we participate in the transversal contract, we have to take responsibility for the expenditure around that. There has been cases in the past where National Treasury actually runs these transversal contracts, so we assume that they run the necessary SEM processes. However, they do, as far as process is concerned, they do involve departments, and you have to actually sign up for it. And so there comes the, if one can say, the level of responsibility that comes your way when you sign up for that. I think we also have to remember that if you want to run your own contract, you have to, for similar nature, you have to prove that you're getting better value for money. So then it becomes very difficult not to participate in a transversal contract as well. But what normally happens is that there might have been challenges at the national level because with SEM processes, it's a highly contested area. You have particular party interest in terms of suppliers who might take it to court or disputing some matters, and so that can delay the renewal of a new contract as well, and it can then have implications for those departments that participate in such a contract as well, or have been waiting for the renewal of the contract as well. So there are some certain aspects that happen in that regard as well. So currently in South Africa, it's not uncommon to have parties disputing matters around awarding of contracts, etc., and so forth. So it's just the nature of where we are at the moment. Then I think, Chairperson, you have also asked the issue around Provincial Lusaka about the HCIs, and I think and a gap information. I think Mr. Cronier has responded to that. Can I just ask Ms. Feldman just to respond to the PYE and NSFAS grant issue that was raised as well, the information gap? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eli, Chairperson and members. On both those cases, Mr. Cronje addressed the Funza matter, but it's the same aspect on the PYEI. The finding related to some of the assistance that was found to have received grants. Some of it is also bursaries from the Funza scheme. We indicated in our response as well that we don't have access to these databases, and we cannot, in other words, in advance, determine if any of these participants will have those grants. So what we do as a preventative measure, we have got declarations that forms part of the appointment contract, where the assistants have to declare that they do not participate in any of these schemes. They don't receive any grants. And it's also part of the framework that is discussed with our schools. So we can only work with preventative measures. Unfortunately, we cannot detect. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. If I can just then carry on in terms of the question was posed, I'm going to come now, Chairperson, to the irregular expenditure issue that the member online raised around prevention of that. So, Chairperson, I think we take irregular expenditure quite seriously because by definition, it's in contravention of an act, although there are technical issues around that as well. So if I can just go into the 57 million rand, that's irregular or disclosed as irregular in our financials at the moment, and in terms of the bigger amount. So the bulk of that amount relates to a furniture contract that we as a department entered into, where as a department and our bid committee had a particular interpretation of the law, and on which basis they then made a recommendation to the HOD to award the contract. And then we proceeded with that. Now, when the AG then came in quite a number of months later on, which is about, say, 6 to 7 months later, because that's the nature of the timing for their work, they were then of the opinion that that awarding of that contract is not within the way how we interpret it in terms of law. We then refer that matter to legal services, and then legal services agreed with the AG. We then had to terminate the contract, which means that our schools, we had to find another way then to get furniture to our schools. There's a legalistic part of it, but there's a practical side in terms of service delivery to this as well. So, so we then stopped the contract, and then obviously we had to then record the irregular expenditure in our books, and that's why you see the 57. So I think if we look over the years, I think for the last year or two, our irregular...
The construction of a school?
No, it's this is furniture. This is furniture. This is desk and chairs. This is desk and chairs and cupboards. Okay, if you want to be, if I break it down to that level. So, you know, this is for learners where they sit on desk and so forth. Because we do the construction of the classroom and the provision of the overhead services is separately done. So we supply, so Mr. Abrams here, he puts the classroom down, and we then supply the textbooks, and the furniture comes in later on as well, because yeah, but that's how we as a department operate. But again, Chairperson, so we have taken this on, and we have terminated the contract, again, as I said, in terms of then recording this into our books as well, Chair. Chair, if I can just also mention...
clear my mind on this. So as irregular as it is, there was no financial expenditure or loss that was incurred.
So, Chairperson, I think that the AG has confirmed there was always, in these cases, there was always service delivery that happened. We haven't paid for anything that we haven't received or no service. This is more about interpretation of law.
Process.
Yeah, because the way the AG operates, the AG says there can be possible public liability if you get sued by whoever, and then you can be found wanting. That's the approach into these matters. It's not necessarily about service delivery, but it is about possible public liability. So again, Chairperson, we have stopped that contract. If I could just get to your question, Chair, if I can just, because we're on irregular, you said that you mentioned that there was no SEM process followed. There was one contract where the contract specifications didn't include certain aspects. And that's the one they were referring to. They made a broad statement to say there was no SEM process followed, but there was a SEM process followed. But the scope of it and the specifications, there were certain services we use in that contract that wasn't in the contract itself, if members understand what I'm saying. But there was an SEM process followed. But because of the technical nature of that, what they call scope creeping, that was declared irregular as well. That was 43,000 Rand. Just in nature, that was 43,000 Rand. What's the AG then said to you that there's no SEM process followed as well? I'm just trying to say that was one of the cases as well. So Chairperson, if I can just get to the other question, the one member asked a question about the budget versus the target. Now, in terms of especially say program 2, which is public ordinary schools, that's where the bulk of our budget is sitting. Now, in program 2, we have particular outputs, which we can measure with Rand and cents, but then we also have outcomes as well. So when they make a crude comparison like this, the underlying assumption is that everything has a Rand amount attached to it. Now, if we want to improve, for example, NEC results, that's very difficult to track, to say, but okay, you're going to, if you want to achieve 80% target for NEC, it's going to cost you so much. If you want to get 90%, it's going to cost you so much. So I think, Chairperson, one of the few departments where we have outputs and we have outcomes. And I think we just have to be nuanced about that sort of comparison. I think where we have not achieved targets, like what's in the audit report, some of that funding has been redirected to other areas, and that will be taken through the adjustment budget where we've applied environment to allocate those funding somewhere else as well. So just to say to the committee that it is something that is there, that we're aware of what the AG is trying to do, but I think it's currently in its infancy stage. And I think we just need to engage more around that to say, okay, how do we find meaning in what is happening here in terms of comparisons? I think if we were just doing brick and mortar, then I think that comparison, it will be spot on and there will be no debates about that. But if you start doing, once you're dealing with outcomes, the monetary issue is not the actual measurement. You have to look at that in terms of just the pure targets as well, in my view. But that's just in terms of the question that the members have asked here as well. I think, Chairperson, if I'm not mistaken, I think I've covered everything in terms of what the members have asked. Thank you.
Any honorable member who's still not clear on issues? I see Honorable Maseko and I see Honorable Bartman.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to find out the AG. This I want to find out, maybe from the audit committee they would know, for the key targets for percentage of learner retained in school systems from grade 10 to 12. He said in his report that the target for 2024 is 74% and achieved in 2023, 75.3%. And it's going to be difficult for you to respond because I don't know why did he mention the 2024 part of it. Why was that important for him to mention it today while we are dealing with 2022, 2023? Or he wanted to highlight that you said the target lower than what you have achieved this, the 2023 financial year. Maybe if you can check it out, if maybe he wanted to highlight that to us, that you said your target lower than what you achieved for 2023, that he wants us to look into that. But the other question it will be, with the financial constraints that are happening, it's not based on and I was looking on page 67 of the quintile allocations of for the schools. And I'm thinking that every year, the beginning of the year, there is a challenge with these kids that are moving into the influx of the people that are moving to Western Cape. Now, with the census, your allocation is based on the students that you do have. And above that, for the new financial year, you get one. Do you see maybe that there is going to be a system that we are going to invoice the provinces where I believe the CEMIS student, it's a national number for the students. So if you receive the student from Gauteng, and then that learner's allocation is in Gauteng, is there a system that is going or to allow you, Minister, to be able to invoice so that you can get that money where it's allocated for you to fight the financial constraints in the province that is happening? Because that is another system that we have to say, how do we go about to make sure that those students that are coming, they're going to get what is due to them? You can afford those textbooks and the tables and the chairs as the allocation is there. Is there a system that will happen, or is the SCOPA can be engaged, or chairperson of education engaged with national to talk to that, to say, how do we invoice from different provinces? Not specifically for Western Cape only. If the Gauteng gets student from Western Cape, they can always invoice you also, Minister. That's my question. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Maseko. Honorable Partner.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, clearly leaders are readers. I remember Maseko is clearly reading her budget documents. So I'm very happy about that, especially since out of the 17,000 students as per the annual report in 2022, 13,000 came from the Eastern Cape in 2022. So I'm interested in that particular conversation. Anyway, my particular question relates to questions. The first one is, okay, so 57 million, we bought desks, we bought chairs, we bought cupboards. Then legal services and AG comes later and they said, we disagree with your interpretation, but the desks, the chairs and the cupboards were delivered. Okay, so now I would like to understand, what is that difference in interpretation? Because next year I'm going to come again, I'm going to be like, I'm not in the same WhatsApp group. That's if I come back. I'm not in the same WhatsApp group. I want to understand this interpretation so that if we can try and get onto the same page as to how does one then interpret such contracts or such transactions or such, I don't know, like, how do we not change that, but are we going to interpret that differently next year? Or is there a fundamental disagreement in interpretation? I don't want a situation where we end up in court like agriculture again because of interpretation, and then years later we come back saying, actually, you can have a better audit. Okay. Then in terms of program 2, it was indicated that, sorry, I wrote this down from the Auditor General. So the Auditor General indicated in program 2, obviously, that some of the underperformance with the refresh and the tech classrooms was redirected for land for schools because you wanted, and I don't know all the technical terms, but you wanted to install inverters for load shedding. And that's why you couldn't report on the other 3 particular KPIs in terms of that refresh and tech for classrooms. Now, in terms of those inverters for classrooms, what I want to understand is, okay, if you then bought inverters for classrooms, how many was bought and how many schools benefited? Because if the money was redirected, it had to end up somewhere. So where did the redirection end up? Thank you.
Honorable Ngondo.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the responses. Can I just follow up on the the last response by the HOD around the issue of the targets and the spending, and accepting the explanation he gives around some of the outputs. He speaks about outputs versus outcomes, and the fact that some, if I understand him well, may be non-financial. So once again, my question, because I was interested to understand that program 2 had a budget of 500 rands. And to date, program 2 has utilized almost all the 500 rands, or 495. Of that 495, it only achieved 40% of their outputs. 60% were not achieved. And now in the explanation of the HOD, I would be interested to understand two things. That the 495 budget of program 2 that would have been utilized, which are these financially related outputs that program 2 would have then spent on? And actually the 40% that has been achieved, what percentage of that 450 or what, or 500 budget that they would have utilized, were allocated or was used to actually deliver the 40%, and the 60% that is not achieved? Does that mean that that particular 60% on the budget that has been spent currently, all of it, if tomorrow you were to wake up and have an opportunity to still achieve that particular 60% with the budget that is almost exhausted, there won't be any requirement of any funding for that 60% for it to be achieved? I'm hoping I'm trying to be as simple as my brain is trying to understand what he was explaining of the outputs, which some of them are non-financial, because I want to understand the 40% which has already been achieved against that budget of that particular program 2. And I'm just sticking with program 2. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mpondo. Any further question, honorable members? And bearing in mind that our meeting will carry on until adjournment, there is no time. So that's why I was asking if are there any further questions? Okay, can we get responses?
Yeah. The invoicing.
I think just on the whole question of the policy question. I mean, yes, census 2022, 7.4 million people, third biggest province. The service delivery pressure is going to increase. I speak for the department when I say I'm sure we'd like to be able to invoice not other provinces but national government. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But what I think we do have an opportunity, and we sort of traversed this at length in the previous meeting. We do know that the education component of the provincial equitable share is now being reviewed. The first iteration has already been shared with us, and we expect to sort of debate over the next year a new funding formula for provinces. And I think that's going to be a big opportunity for a big risk, but also a big opportunity for our department. And as we said earlier, I think a role certainly for the legislature to play in that process, in scrutinizing the formula, possibly coming up with alternative ideas, including invoicing other provinces, and at the end of the day, also scrutinizing the actual impact and the actual numbers that lie behind the formula. And that's a debate we're going to have over the next year, assuming, as the Honourable Bartman says, that any of us here, the public representatives, are back, which we might not.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think there was a question around the desk and chairs and the interpretation issue. what I've asked my SEM director to do in terms of the way forward and to prevent this from happening, I've asked them to refer especially our big contracts to legal services. It's like a vetting process just to make sure that legally we are covered. Because I mean, I can't afford that we have different interpretations. Because as you know, the law is subject to interpretation. Generally in South Africa, that's why you have different outcomes sometimes for the same matter. But what we are doing is we will refer our major cases to legal services. They also have, as which you would know, some capacity constraints, but that's what we intend doing, to refer to them just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And if the AG does come and audit things, that we will say to them, but we know we have obtained the legal opinion and this is where we are at the moment. And that's why we've proceeded to award contracts or not. Thank you. Then, Chairperson, if I can go on to the other question around Program 2 and around the refresh program and the unexpenditure around it. Members ask, as far as inverters is concerned, how many were purchased and how many schools are involved? I think we'll provide it as a written response because we do not have any information with us here at the moment. Then, as far as the last member online question is concerned, I'm just going to say briefly, just to not to complicate the response, but let me say briefly that we had in-year pressures on compensation last year for the year under review, and some funding in Program 2 was shifted towards compensation, just as a brief explanation of where the funding has gone to, Chairperson. So I'm not going to go into the 40% and the 60% again, but just to say for the member, the funding was redirected, and that will go through a normal environment process, which a committee, which I think is going to be the standing committee, will have oversight as well, because that will go through Provincial Treasury and then to the particular committee will have oversight in that regard as well. Thank you. Yeah, I think the member asked a question around the land retention. Chair, well, I think it's a kind of a guess now, but I know in the past the AG had in the past findings around that as well, and I think maybe just trying to highlight that the department is now reporting on that matter, and there are no particular issues in that regard as well. That's would be my understanding. Yeah.
So obviously, obviously will look into your question. We'll have to look into it, but so the AG mentioned it to you, yeah, about the 74% being lower than this year. But we will have to look into that. It may be a function of the population size for the cohort somehow that we brought that down. I don't know what the story is. We'll have to come back to you.
Can always send it to check what is it all about, because he'll be the one who would have made clarity of why was it important that he report about it. Chair, we are okay.
If there are no further questions from honorable members, let me make use of the opportunity to thank the department led by the minister and the HOD for coming to the meeting and answer some of the questions, our questions generally, in spite of some of them might have been not been as easy as you would have loved them. I must just quickly interrupt myself. Normally, the reason I didn't, because we normally see there are no members of the public. I don't think there are members of the public even online. So that's why I don't normally make that request. Although we know in the morning the committee had a lot of members of the public, but normally it looked like they are not interested in coming to the financial part of the meeting there. So, yeah, so that's why I did not actually bother to ask whether are there any questions from members of the public. Thank you very much for the reminder. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I don't know whether are there any remarks that you'd like to make before we might close.
I think, thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for letting us conduct ourselves well in this session. You know, education is it's a big organization, big ship, but we have to make immediate decisions. You know, there's the 17th of January every year, once every 365 days. So no other department faces that. We have to make decisions. If you dig into those furniture contracts and some of these things, a decision has to be made, and then sometimes we make the wrong decision. So obviously what we've done is we have to put the belts and braces in so that you make the correct decisions. And what Mr. Eli has done now is to say on these contracts that are above certain amounts where we think it could be, where we're trying to test the water, maybe we can go this way, we're not sure. We're going to get legal advice. That's what that sort of should sort us out. And then obviously from my side, just the commitment on the performance indicators to try and just make sure that we actually just get over the line in relation to that. And that's something that I will keep personally, will keep that high on the agenda so that the whole organization can shift in that way. But then maybe just to thank the chairperson yourself and the committee for the spirit of the engagement and for the oversight. Certainly this is a very important part of accountability to the public. And so we value that. Thank you very much.
Minister.
Chairperson, thank you very much. We don't know what the future holds, but I sincerely hope that I will be back here next year to share a clean audit. But of course, Honourable Khalid Sayed might be sitting here sharing. That is out of our hands. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. That's actually ending on a very nice lighter note, as you said that it's actually the last of this administration really to have a standing committee on public accounts for purposes of looking into the annual report. So obviously we've taken a decision among ourselves that at the last meeting of the standing committee, that's when we are going to do resolutions based on what all the departments say. We might decide we'd like to see another department. There are certain that, but if for purposes of looking into the annual report in terms of all its section, it's definitely gonna be the last. So in that regard, Honorable Minister, we must just wait and see what the next year is actually going to bring for us. You know, there's always a lot of surprises in politics, and there's never a boring moment in politics. So with that said, thank you very much for coming, and also thank you very much to HOD. Thank you very much to all the members of the departments, the delegation that have come. I'm sure you have also realized that we are not as difficult people as people might think we are. We might ask uncomfortable questions now and then, but I always say it's never with an intention to try or trick you or trying to catch you up. We are just playing our role of having to hold the executive accountable and also fulfilling our role as the Public Accounts Committee on the whole accountability ecosystem, together with our partners, the Auditor General, as well as the Audit Committee, which so far we've been working very well. Thank you very much. And also thank you very much, honorable members, for your commitment and your ever attendance. No, it has been a very hectic 2 weeks for you. At least the next week is going to be the last, and we are looking forward into actually finalizing it. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned, and I believe there is a coffee and snacks there. You can actually join us. Sure.